If you're listening to a podcast at the moment, the chances are you're probably listening to it on an Apple device. The vast majority of podcast listeners do so on Apple devices. And now Google want to change that. This week they unveiled, I guess, a new strategy for how they want to up the amount of podcast listening that happens on Android devices, but also just on their platform as well. So how is this going to change the podcasts you listen to? Are they going to change the way they sound? And what does it really mean? To explain that, we have Ariel Bogle, who's the technology reporter across the ABC, and Tegan Jones from Gizmodo. How are Google going to reclaim the podcast market?
Well, one really interesting thing they're doing is introducing podcasts and making them sort of prominent in search. When you search for news about what's happening in Syria, for example, they might show you and prioritize the daily New York Times podcast, which often talks about that issue, just alongside images and news articles and other search results. And that's really exciting, I think. That's like a level of discoverability that podcasts have never had up till this moment.
Is there a sense of how they're going to make podcast audio more visible to their search engine? Do we have a sense of how that's going to work?
A lot of it has to do with just making it look good, making you want to click on it. So they've made it already so easy. So, you know, if you search up a podcast or something that you're interested in and they deliver you a podcast, you can then click on it. It'll show you the other episodes in that podcast, and you can even subscribe as if it's an app as well. So I think just making it really functional and really easy is key. And that's what they're really hitting.
What is the native podcasting app like from Google? Do they have one? Because I know that as we go through the stats, certainly here at the ABC, the vast majority of people that listen to podcasts are doing it on the Apple app. Then you've got Pocket Cast, which I'm quite a big fan of, and Overcast and things like that. So is there a native podcast app on Google? I love that. Blank faces. That says no. That's a clear no.
No, there definitely isn't yet. So up until this point, it's all been third party, like you were saying. So again, I'm a huge fan of Pocket Casts as well. So I'm wondering if this is going to be the first step before they actually release their own one as well. It already halfway looks like one.
I think they're definitely inching towards making creating an app or sort of a page where you can subscribe if you like what you found. And also they've always talking about, because it's Google, personalization, recommendations. So all that search data or podcasts you listen to already will be used to sort of suggest other possible podcasts to you. And this is where it gets interesting too, because as you mentioned, iOS, Apple has dominated this space for a long time, and podcast creators have had to go hat in hand to Apple and sort of kiss the ring.
Please, sir, can I be featured on your page?
Featured on its top podcasts or like best of the week and all that stuff. And it's actually given Apple a ton of power over the podcasting space, because if someone gets recommended by Apple on the front page, it just sends like a stream of traffic. So I think podcasters will be a little thrilled to have some competition there.
You can subscribe to podcasts in Google Play. So that is, I assume, the primary venue in which they would be embracing.
And you can do it through their new rollout as well. I did it today. So there's like a little subscribe button as well. So
what is the value for Google here? What are they likely to get out of investing in this area?
Well, I don't think they have much to lose. And it's probably like not that hard work and not that expensive for them to try and own a bit of the podcast space, because they're not the only player. Of course, Apple, as we've discussed, Spotify has also moved quite heavily into the podcast space, hosting the content there alongside music. But it's a low impact, inexpensive way just to own a little bit more of the activities people do online.
Are there things that you can do in your podcast, maybe in the meta tags or the description, that will mean that you're more searchable to Google in this day and age, now that they have decided to put some of their pennies into this arena?
Yeah, I think SEO is going to become even more important now. So if people are Googling things and they might be prioritizing podcasts, like Ariel said, then your tags and your description, especially if you're writing about something quite timely or even something that's a little bit more evergreen, if you want to be popping up at the top there, you're going to really want to pay attention to what you're putting in your descriptions and in the names of your podcast episodes, I think.
Yeah, one other interesting thing I've seen people discuss is whether now that podcasts will be delivered in search, whether podcasters will have to think a bit differently about how the episodes are structured.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of podcasts, if you're a long-term subscriber, are very intimate. They assume knowledge about who the presenters are, how the show will flow, even what the show's about. which is quite enjoyable, like when you're an avid subscriber and you've come back, for 100 episodes. But now that you're going to be discovered through search, you might need to think about how your episodes can catch someone who has no idea what you're on about.
If we're talking about the interface through which you listen to your podcast, Ariel, what would you like to see change? What would make it easier or a more seamless and pleasurable experience for you?
I'm really enjoying short podcasts at the moment, 5, 10 minute, 15 minute podcasts, just because I find it's like that's something I can listen to in the shower. So I wouldn't mind some extra search sort of options. I guess I'd love to be able to search by time, not just topic. I'd settle for just good search, because definitely I find on all the major podcasting apps, searching by subject matter is really lackluster at the moment.
Yeah, I would actually agree with that as well. And I would, as much as it's terrifying that Google is already gathering all of our data, I would like there to be some sort of, I guess, implementation where it will recommend me podcasts based on what I've listened to before, what my interests are. Look, if they're going to
We've just spent the last month talking about how that's bad.
I know, but at least, look, if they're going to do it anyway, I might as well get something out of it, I suppose.
But that's exactly the argument.
I know.
Like, oh, it's useful. I don't care that they have all my data.
I'm very aware of this.
Ariel's going to be writing a cautionary tale about you and then on the website at the end of the week.
I actually think I would also just like them to actually push out an app. It already kind of looks like an app when you look for it in search. I just want an app.
Why wouldn't they have done that?
Maybe it's just a bit of a soft launch, I suppose, like dipping their toes in the water. Like you said, they haven't done this before, so maybe they'll see how many people actually bother to use it in search and then go from there and see if it's worth actually putting the money into building an app.
All right, you can hear much more of this in the podcast. I've downloaded the show. It's a podcast. Who knew? You can find it right now on whichever podcast app you like, including probably Google right now, and we will see you there. Bye.